Welcome, NutritionRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, a university nutrition professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Monday Market News from the food world. Hey, everybody. Well, it's a busy week. In fact, over the weekend, we did a simulcast bonus episode with the Iron Radio guys, so please check that out. But we're back to our regular brief 10-ish minute news stints. This one's about the Dirty Dozen. You probably heard about this list. The headline, this is by Ryan Vengum through Lab Roots. Of course, lots of people report on the Dirty Dozen. Blueberries and green beans are now on the list. So just to set this up, pesticides, of course, are applied to the foods that we eat in order to make them good enough to actually reach market. I don't know if you've ever seen, for example, an apple tree that wasn't sprayed or something of those lines. But pesticides, of course, can lead to cancer, have an impact on children's development. There's all sorts of things. And they could even be on food after we wash them. And the whole idea here is that that's troubling. The nonprofit Environmental Working Group are the people who regularly post their shopper's guide to pesticides in produce. It's at ewg.org. So the idea is to provide consumers with insights into which foods have high exposure to pesticides, and they have a Dirty Dozen, and they also have a Clean 15, which I believe is a more recent development. If you look at the methodology at all, to gather info about pesticides found in these foods, researchers at the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, collected samples, 46,000 roughly, from 46 different fruits and vegetables. They prepare the food similar to how a typical consumer might do that. Wash it, peel it, that sort of thing, typical types of prep. They found over 200 different pesticides in the foods that they tested, including some that are supposed to be banned. But let's get to the meat of the issue, or the blueberries and green beans of the issue. Those are ones that made their way onto the list this year, blueberries and green beans. Blueberries, of course, we know have antioxidant properties. Those anthocyanins can help combat inflammation, for example. Green beans I'm a little less excited about, but that's typical, if you will, bodybuilder dieting food. It's a fibrous veg, so good source of fiber. Not really as heavy in the polyphenols as blueberries, might be considered. Other foods on this Dirty Dozen list, and again, this list is controversial. Not everybody is panicked by it, but strawberries and spinach are on the list. I believe spinach is at the top spot. That's sad face. Spinach also loaded with all kinds of nutrients, as well as kale, peaches, cherries, and grapes. And what about the Clean 15, foods that are relatively safe to eat from a pesticide perspective? We have avocados on that list, pineapple, asparagus, and sweet potatoes. Again, there's some controversy in these sorts of lists. These consumer protection groups are out to protect consumers by definition. But I don't think anybody is really suggesting you don't have these fruits and vegetables. I think the main thing here is that if you are concerned, you might want to dig further, maybe choose an organic version of that particular fruit or vegetable, whereas something that's already on the Clean 15, one perspective might be, well, then I'm not going to worry about that one as much as far as buying the more expensive organic. It's worth noting that the EWG themselves start off in their piece stating that nearly 75% of non-organic fresh produce sold in the U.S. contains residues of pesticides. And relevant to the title of this year's news clip, blueberries and green beans are now reported to have troubling concentrations, according to the EWG, of pesticides that can harm the nervous system called organophosphate insecticides, although they do concede that the levels have decreased over the past 10 years. And the green bean samples in particular apparently have residues of acephate, ACEPHATE, which is a toxic pesticide, which was banned. The EPA banned more than 10 years ago from use on green beans grown for food. So just to wrap up this brief news clip here, the Dirty Dozen. Number 1, strawberries. Number 2, spinach. Number 3, kale, collard, or mustard greens. Number 4, peaches. Number 5, pears. 6, nectarines. 7, apples. 8, grapes. 9, bell and hot peppers. 10, cherries. And now we have 11 blueberries and 12 green beans. That's the Dirty Dozen list. Highlights, as far as this goes, more than 90% of samples of strawberries, apples, cherries, spinach, nectarines, and grapes tested positive for residues of 2 or more pesticides. And the rundown of the Clean 15, again, straight from EWG.org. 15 items, the lowest amount of pesticide residues according to their analysis of the most recent USDA data. Number 1, avocados. 2, sweet corn. 3, pineapple. 4, onions. 5, papaya. 6, sweet peas. 7, asparagus. 8, honeydew melon. 9, kiwi. 10, cabbage. 11, mushrooms. That's good. 12, mangoes. 13, sweet potatoes. 14, watermelon. And 15, carrots. Almost 65% of the Clean 15 foods reportedly had no detectable pesticide residues. Just to wrap up, of course, there's lots of methodology. Please go check out EWG.org before you make decisions about which fruits or veg you're going to actually buy. There's even pesticides that are commonly used that may not be considered in this database. How do you feel about it? My personal opinion is I still get blueberries that aren't necessarily organic. I just feel like the pros outweigh the cons. Everybody's going to have different situations. Do they have kids in the house? All that sort of thing. But let me know. You could check out our YouTube backup at Lawnman07. You can do that search within YouTube. Or send an email, lawnman7@hotmail.com. And that's going to be it for this little installment, and we'll see you next time. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.